So in Westeros, the Dragonkeepers are a unique, highly skilled organisation. And it was established by King Jaehaerys, first of his name, after two pretty serious security incidents. The first was the theft of 3 dragon eggs by this lady, Alyssa Farman, best friend and occasional roommate to Queen Rhaena Targaryen. Alyssa and Rhaena had a falling out. Alyssa wanted to go off adventuring, to travel, to discover new lands. Rhaena did not. She forbade Alyssa from going. But Alyssa went anyway, and she stole 3 dragon eggs in order to finance the building of this ship that would take her on her journey. There is also a very strong theory within this fandom that these are the same 3 eggs that make their way to Daenerys Targaryen and hatch into becoming Drogon, Viserion and Rhaegal. Another incident freaked out King Jaehaerys even more and further solidified the need for a professional dragon-keeping organisation. I'm talking about the time that Princess Aerea Targaryen disappeared on the back of Balerion the Black Dread. How did this tiny little girl get access to Balerion, let alone mount and fly away on this dragon? It highlighted a serious breach in security. How could a young girl do this? And what's happened to them? Where have they gone? Nobody knew. What if something had happened to Aerea? What if she'd fallen off this dragon? What if somebody else had got their hands on Balerion and then could challenge the Targaryens' dragon supremacy? These were all very real concerns for House Targaryen at the time. Now, Aerea and Balerion, they do return, albeit after a long while and with some serious injuries, and Aerea dies shortly after. The whole thing just traumatized the Targaryens, freaked them out, because Daemon Targaryen was right when he said, dreams didn't make us kings, dragons did. And if somebody else can come along and take your dragons or take the unhatched eggs, that's a problem. Agents and informers were sent out to try and find the missing dragon eggs, and then they were told, stop what you're doing, we've got another problem, you need to go and find Aerea and Balerion. But these were just regular agents. They did not know dragon behaviour all that well. They were out of their depth. They didn't really get many leads. Fire and Blood describes the efforts to hunt down Aerea and Balerion proved useless, as with the dragon eggs. Rumours, lies and false sightings concocted for the sake of a reward. The 3 stolen dragon eggs, they were never retrieved. And so it's entirely possible that they are the same 3 eggs that wound up in the possession of Daenerys Targaryen. These 2 experiences, they shook Jaehaerys, and he was like, right, let's get a professional order of people who are trained in dragon whisperers, if you will. They will feed the dragons, they will tend to their needs, they will provide security for the dragons. They'll make sure that people who are not meant to have access don't get in. According to Fire and Blood, to ascertain there would be no repetition of Princess Aerea's escape on Balerion, the king decreed that all the dragons should be guarded night and day, regardless of where they laired. A new order of guards was created for this purpose, the Dragonkeepers, 77 strong and clad in suits of gleaming black armour, their helms crested by a row of dragon scales that continued diminishing down their backs. The more time that these people spent with the dragons, the more they got to know them, the more that their skills were increasing and they were able to provide care for the dragons. By this point, Balerion had been locked up in the dragon pit, supposedly for his own protection. The dragon keepers came to adore their dragons. They tended to them in a very caring manner. There's an understanding of just how special and magical and sacred the dragons are, and how Targaryen power rests on them having dragons. So to be part of this order, you've got to be the best of the best. When there were no longer any dragons in Westeros, there was no need to have dragon keepers. So the knowledge, the information that the dragon keepers had accrued over their many decades in their positions, it's all lost. And it ties into how when Daenerys Targaryen brings dragons back into the world, she doesn't even have a saddle to ride on. Nobody alive has seen a dragon before. There's never been any need to continue with that knowledge. The Citadel was certainly not encouraging the retaining of that kind of information. They were happy to let the knowledge be lost because they didn't like dragons or anything magical. But their uniforms, the armour with the scales going down their backs, that is retained. In fact, when Sansa Stark is fleeing King's Landing with Sir Dontos, they pass through an area that does not seem to be frequented. It's described as dark and dusty, but she sees the rows of armour and they have the scales down the back, which would suggest this is the armour that the Dragonkeepers wore. It's certainly not on display, for obvious reasons, but they haven't binned them off yet.